If you could describe Keir Starmer in one word, or if there's one word that comes to mind, what is that word?
What's the watershed?
I don't know who that is. Sorry.
Too right wing.
I've heard quite a lot of people sort of around about here calling him a Tory in a red tie.
I hate him just as much as I hate, Joe Anderson, if you know who he is. I hate him just as much as all of the corrupt Labour politicians that have been before him. So I hate him just as much as Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak. They're all in the same. There's no difference to any of them. We need a North West Party or a Liverpool Party or something to put their asses into gear, if you ask me, you know what I'm saying?
I do not. I've got no time for him. He's a placeman. He's there by the establishment to make the Labour Party mirror the establishment.
Even if I agreed with him, I'd find it difficult to like him, I think.
Keir Starmer is an educated chancer. And he's very much like a man called Derek Hatton, who was an educated chancer in the 70s. He saw his chance to have his day, and he joined the militant tendency group. And he was their mouthpiece, because he was more intelligent than them. But his radical views, they weren't true. He's a champagne socialist. He was then and he is now. And he jumped on that bandwagon. And Keir Starmer's the same. He's the delusioned left-wing lawyer.
Liverpool as it is sort of a very socialist city. There's such a sense of community here that everyone looks after everyone. And I think his sort of toing and froing about policies and sort of dancing around the skirting boards isn't evidence enough for the people of Liverpool to maybe give him their vote. But in all fairness, I think people in and around Liverpool will be anything but Tory. It's just that it's anything but them, not them again. So I don't think it's Keir Starmer exactly that they would have wanted, but he's the lesser of two evils at this point. So
if he does win the next election, which seems likely, it will be because the Tories are so bad and so incompetent and so offensive that people are having to vote for the alternative rather than him inspiring people to vote for them.
And if I was to ask you that same question about the Conservative Party, what word comes to mind?
Oh, outrage in what they've I won't say what they've done to the country, what they've taken out of the country. They've ripped it apart.
Out of touch.
Tories. Selfish, not even being in a mean way, but can be selfish, like turning the NHS private. I've seen that. Like, I think they just focus on silly stuff. Like, people with higher-ish, like, people who are higher up in wealth. Like, I feel like the Conservatives goes to more their side. But it just Labour all the way.
It seems like every time they get a new leader, which is, let's face it, once every couple of months, they just get worse.
Difficult in one word, because they've let the chances slip. They've had 13 years and they've made a lot of mistakes.
But you still trust them?
I trust them more than I trust Labour.
Crooks, I think. They're a gang of crooks. They're extremely right-wing. They've lost the confidence of a lot of sections of the capitalist class in Britain, which is quite an achievement for a Conservative Party. And they have exposed themselves, whether it's under Johnson or Truss, and May beforehand, and obviously under Sunak. They look after their mates. They make sure that the contracts go to their friends.
they don't actually want to protect a lot of the right people in this country. They only want to secure more power for themselves instead of focusing on the actual things that do need fixing, such as the NHS. So
Kind of just not with the times, sort of.
Just not related to what normal people are probably going through, you know what I mean?
What is the word that comes to mind when you think of Keir Starmer?
Spineless.
You know when like certain shoes squeak on the floor, like when you're in the gym? It's kind of an annoying noise. It's a bit like that, I'd say.
It's almost hard to say. Like, he's just such a grey man. I couldn't tell you what particularly he stands for, other than not being a Conservative politician, allegedly. I think he's sort of waiting to get into government by default and doesn't really have any ideas.
Bland.
Bland? Why is that?
I don't know, he doesn't particularly excite me as a leader.
Would you describe Keir Starmer as a progressive leader?
No, not at all. I think he's backtracked on so many of his pledges and policies, thrown trans people under the bus, thrown the Muslim community under the bus, thrown every minority essentially under the bus.
I mean, he's a difficult character, basically, isn't he? I mean, in terms of the words, he's very much, he's working for his own interests, I guess, in a lot of respects, but he's kind of working to change Labour as he sees it. But it's very frustrating dealing with someone who has backtracked quite a lot, basically, on his promises and that kind of thing.
I'm concerned about their links to property developers. I'm concerned about the number of people at all levels of the Labour Party, but particularly in the shadow cabinet, who are private landlords themselves. And I would really like to see firmer commitments from them about council housing construction, about tougher powers for renters to assert the rights that they do have, expansions of rights that renters don't have around tenancy security, around rent caps.
I think the Labour Party is becoming more and more amicable with businesses, with landlords, with people who aren't interested in making life easier for ordinary working people.
If one word was to come to mind to describe the current Conservative Party, what would that word be?
Oh, like evil.
Really? Why is that?
Well, I don't know. I feel like they've shown themselves time and time again to be callous when it comes to a lot of social issues. Migrant rights is one of the obvious ones that comes to mind. I also think like their recent U-turns on environmental policy is very concerning. I don't have anything nice to say, I don't think.
I don't have enough bad words to say. Rotten.
They're fascist nutjobs.
You want to describe Starmer in one word for me?
Complex. Inspiring.
Next Prime Minister.
Competent. Competent. How about you?
Excited.
What about Rishi Sunak?
I'm too nice to say anything about another human being. He is human, isn't he?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Terrible.